All right, welcome to The Explainer. You've probably heard it a million times. Addiction is a disease, something that just takes over your brain. But what if that's not really the whole picture? Today, we're going to dig into a totally different way of looking at it. You know that feeling? It's this incredibly weird sense that you're not even in the driver's seat of your own life, like something else is in control. That experience is right at the heart of addiction. But the big question is, what's actually going on?
So is addiction a disease that hijacks the brain? I mean, this is the story we're told, right? It's the standard model. But just for a bit, let's put that idea on hold. Let's really poke at it. Because we're about to walk through a psychological way of thinking that could, honestly, change everything you thought you knew about addiction.
Okay, so first up, this whole body snatcher disease idea. Let's really get into what that means. This is the popular theory, right? The one that says addiction is like an alien invader that gets into your brain and just takes over the controls.
So the argument goes something like this. Using a substance literally changes the wiring in your brain. And that change creates this incredibly powerful urge, a compulsion that just steamrolls your own good intentions. It makes quitting feel next to impossible.
But hang on a second. This is where that model starts to get a little shaky. See, the whole disease idea, it's pretty good at explaining why someone keeps using, right? The compulsion part. But what about the very first time? Think about it. How can a disease cause the action that you have to take before you even have the disease? It's a real head-scratcher and a pretty big hole in the argument.
And this is the question the source material really wants us to ask. Does it really add up that your brain just takes the wheel and turns you into some kind of puppet? Or could there be something else at play here? Something different happening altogether?
All right, so if it's not some pre-existing disease that's pulling all the strings, then what is? Well, this leads us to a completely different idea, something much more internal. It's called the demand for relief.
So what is this demand? It's basically an internal, psychological push to find relief from pain. And that pain can be physical or it can be emotional. The key takeaway here is that the motivation, the push, it comes from inside you. We're talking about a deep, powerful, totally human need to soothe an ache, to find some comfort, to just take the edge off.
And you can see just how powerful this demand can be. It's often fueled by things we totally get, like anxiety and depression. But check out that third one, boredom. Now, for a lot of people, especially young people, the source material argues that boredom isn't just, having nothing to do. It's this deep, almost unbearable internal pain, and they're desperate for a way out.
Okay, so this is really interesting. That motivation, that demand, it doesn't just stay the same your whole life. It actually changes, it evolves. And understanding that journey is key to understanding the whole path of addiction.
And this timeline lays out a pretty common path. When we're kids, our imagination is all we need, right? It's limitless. But then we hit our teenage years, that boredom kicks in, and we start looking for something more adult to make us feel something, anything. And then as we move into adulthood, the reason for using often changes again. It stops being about a thrill and becomes more of a tool, a way to cope with the very real pressures and pains of life.
Okay, but that still leaves a big question. If it isn't a disease taking over, then how in the world do we explain that body snatcher feeling? That feeling of not being in control? Well, this is where things get really fascinating. The source suggests we think about it not as a disease, but as a kind of self-hypnosis, a trance. Now, to be clear, the feeling of being out of control is absolutely real. No one's denying that. But the idea here is that it's a psychological state you enter, not some virus that gets into your system. It's kind of like when you're watching a movie and you get so lost in it that you actually start crying for a character. You know they're not real, but for a moment, you're totally in that world. You're in a trance.
And this relapse trance, it seems to follow a pretty clear four-step pattern. First, there's the intention. You tell yourself, that's it, I'm done. But then, step 2, the discomfort starts to creep in. You feel off, agitated. Step 3 is surrender. You just give in, and it feels like the trance totally takes over as you use. And finally, step 4, the disconnect. That's when you're looking back at your own actions, thinking, whoa, who even was that person?
And this quote, it just perfectly captures that feeling, doesn't it? It's the language of someone in that trance. It's a way of saying, hey, it wasn't me who did it. It was something else, some outside force. The car had a mind of its own.
So let's think about this for a second. If we run with this idea that addiction is a trance we put ourselves into, well, that has massive implications for how we think about getting out of it. It changes the whole game.
And this is the big shift right here.
See, the old disease model, it's all about slowly, passively, waiting for your brain chemistry to heal. But this psychological model, it says that recovery can happen in an instant, the very moment you decide to change your mind and break that trance.
So why is this so important? Well, for one, it just seems to fit the actual human experience of addiction a lot better. It handles all the complexity. But maybe the most crucial part is this. By thinking about addiction as something you do, an action you take, instead of a disease you have, it suddenly gives you a way forward. It provides real, actionable steps for change, and at the end of the day, it puts the power right back in your hands.
And that brings us to one last really powerful thought. If addiction is a trance, who is the hypnotist? If you feel like you've been taken over, who's doing the taking over? Well, the answer this model gives us is you. You're the hypnotist. And if you're the one with the power to put yourself into that trance, then you, and only you, have the power to wake yourself up.